Well, how did you sleep Thursday night? I, like perhaps many of you, did not sleep very well Thursday night. Once I learned that Israel's war with Iran had begun, I couldn't get to sleep. I tossed and I turned and I turned and I tossed. And then in the middle of the night, I realized my salvation, which is that there is a 7-hour time difference between Boston and Israel. So in the early, weird, wee hours of the morning, I called our friend, my friend, our teacher, Micah Goodman, who lives in Kfar Adumim. It was in the middle of the night, my time, but it was mid-morning his time. And I could barely breathe. And then the minute that I could hear Micha's voice, and Micah had kind of two voices. First, a voice of deep inspiration, and then also a big asterisk and some concern. Here's the inspiration, which allowed me to breathe. Micah actually sounded ebullient and exhilarated. Here's how he put it. He put it this way. He said that what Israel accomplished at the beginning of the war on June 13th, by the way, June 13 is 6/13, and I don't usually talk about such things like numbers and mazel dickin numbers, but on 6/13, he said what Israel accomplished is more impressive than had ever been accomplished at the outset of a war. In fact, he said that if you take all of Israel's finest moments in military battlefields, that is the Six-Day War, and that is Entebbe, and that is the destruction in 1981 of Iraq's nuclear reactor in Osirak, and that is the beeping cell phones and pagers that crippled Hezbollah. If you put all that together, that's what you have on June 13th, with the beginning of our war in Iran. And he said what Israel did had never been done before. When you think about it, that Israel was able to accomplish the elimination of the leading generals in Iran and the leading nuclear scientists in Iran, and they were able to do it in their homes, in their beds, in a targeted way. They didn't kill the family members, they just killed the scientists who wanted to kill Israel. They just killed the generals who wanted to kill Israel. And how did that happen, Micah asked. And he says the following, that we're not very good, humans are not very good at planning for something that had never before happened. And what Israel did Thursday night had never before happened. It took all kinds of intelligence and all kinds of covert and Mossad and the drones. It was just beyond the ken to think that it could happen, which is why the generals and the research scientists and the nuclear people were in bed when Israel eliminated them. Add to that more than 100 missions against Iranian places, both military and nuclear. Our jets avoided any detection and just got off to a historic start of this war. He said the morale of Israelis is very, very high because of this. That's on the one hand. And then there was also the but there was a but. First of all, as you know, Israeli public life is canceled. Israelis can't go to shul. They can't do in Israel what we are doing now, gathering in public in shul. All of his lectures for the week are canceled indefinitely. Public events are canceled. I had shared the story, which I talked to my brother-in-law right after I got off the phone with Micah, of a woman who was getting married on the Mazel day of June 13th, and she was literally dressed in her gown, her bridal gown. She was really ready to walk down the aisle on a Friday, June 13th, and the wedding is indefinitely canceled. There's that sense. And then, in addition to all that, there's food insecurity because the airport is closed, as you know, and Israel doesn't grow its own food, all of its own food, as you know. And so when they got the all clear that they could leave the bunker, Micah and his wife and kids spent the night in the bunker, he ran to the grocery store to get some food, and everybody had the same idea, and all the community of Kfar Adumim was in the grocery store, and the shelves were barren. So there's a lot of edge. And of course, The war got off to a really good start for Israel, but the war is just beginning. And as you know, 3 Israelis died yesterday. Iran managed to land missiles in Tel Aviv, and where it goes from here, nobody knows. We are in the land of radical uncertainty. Great historic start, but what it will mean for Israel, what it will mean for Iran, what it will mean for the region, what it will mean for the world, radical uncertainty. So here's my question to you. How do we who live here, not there, how do we process all of that complexity? And what does what's happening there, what does it ask of us? And better yet, what does it demand of us? So there is a text that speaks so eloquently and perfectly to our relationship to Israel and our relationship to war. And it is the text that we read on Yom Kippur Day, our holiest day of the year. It's from Leviticus 16. It tells the story that Aaron, as the high priest, takes 2 goats, Shnei Seirim. And these 2 goats, they look the same, and they are the same, and they're the same age, and you just can't tell them apart without a scorecard. 2 goats. But something's going to happen to these 2 goats. They're going to have radically different trajectories. And the Torah goes out of its way to say, it's random, random, random. Random, random, random. What happens to these 2 goats? The Hebrew word for random is goral, which means a lottery. And I just want to read one verse in Hebrew. Listen to how the word goral, lottery, is repeated 3 times in one verse. V'natana Haron al shnei haseirim goralot. Aaron put upon these 2 goats lotteries. Goral echad la'adonai. One lottery this goat goes to God. V'goral echad la'azazel. And the other goat goes to Azazel. So, 2 goats who are otherwise the same, just randomly, one goat goes to God, one goat goes to Azazel. What does that mean? Well, the goat that goes to God dies. The goat that goes to God gets slaughtered. You think that the goat that goes to God won the lottery. Turns out the goat that goes to God lost the lottery, because the goat that goes to God gets slaughtered, dead, done. That's the goat that goes to God. Azazel. Nobody knows what Azazel means. Nobody in the history of the human condition, nobody in the history of the Jewish people knows what Azazel means. But here's what we do know about the goat that goes to Azazel. It won the lottery because it gets to live. Because it is sent off to the wilderness, and guess what? Where do goats live? They live in the wilderness. That goat gets to go home and live free. Now, here's the thing about when your goral is ladonai, when you are fated to God. It seems nice, it's holy, it seems important, it seems it's of consequence, it seems like you're skewing high on purpose and meaning, but it is frequently fatal. And nobody knows that better than Israelis. And nobody knows that better than Israeli soldiers. And nobody knows that better. Goral Adonai means you could be dead than the families of Israeli soldiers. Shira was recently on a mission in Israel last month, and they met with this family, a Jewish family from Brookline that made Aliyah. It was a very powerful meeting, very powerful conversation. And there was a daughter of this family who was 23 years old. And she told her Aliyah story. She made Aliyah in her early 20s, and she met and fell in love with this fantastic Israeli man. And they got married. And they were so happily married. And they were so deeply in love. And then he fought and died in battle in Gaza. and now she's a 23-year-old widow. If she had stayed behind in Boston this weekend, she'd be thinking about which weekends over the summer am I going to Cape Cod? But because she is in Israel, she's a 23-year-old widow. So these goats are not figures in a story we read about Yom Kippur. These goats are us. We are these goats. If you are Jewish, these two goats randomly assigned are our story. What do I mean? Most of us who are in America, most of us who grow up in America because somewhere down the line, our parents or our grandparents or our great-grandparents, when they left the hell of Europe, when they left the pogroms, when they left the massacres, when they left the Pale of Settlement, when they left and survived the Shoah, they came to America. And therefore, we grow up in America. That's Gora La'azazel. We get to be home. And most Israelis, not all, of course, there are people who choose to make Aliyah, but most Israelis are Israelis because somewhere down the line, their parent or their grandparent or their great-grandparent made Aliyah when they left the hell of Europe and they survived the Shoah and they left the pogroms. They moved to Israel, not to New Jersey. And as a consequence, their children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren grow up in Israel and are serving in the IDF. And this is not theoretical. This is real. In fact, this is here, this is this week. This very week, a wonderful man who survived the Shoah passed away. Father and grandfather of members of our community. And his survival story of the Shoah is 1,000 miracles. And after he survived the Shoah, he moved to the holy state of New Jersey. And there, he got married, and he built a family, and he had children, and he had grandchildren, and he built a business. And this man had cousins, and the cousins also survived the hell of Europe, but they made Aliyah. And therefore, in the same family, you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, some of whom are here and some of whom are in Gaza, or some of whom are mobilized again. Randomly, the happenstance of where your grandparent or great-grandparent happened to move, here or in Israel. And just like the happenstance of the goat shaped the trajectory of the goat, the happenstance of where your grandparent, where your ancestor happened to move, shapes our trajectory now. I mean, literally shapes our trajectory now. Israelis are spending this war in the bunkers. We're reading about it. Israelis, like my brother and sister-in-law, are seeing their children who are now called up for Miluim for the third and the fourth and the fifth time. If you complain when you get jury duty, jury duty. My nephews, who have young children and wives, are serving in the IDF for their fourth and fifth times. We read about the retaliation. They experience the retaliation. And most of all, they can never press pause. To be an Israeli always, and especially to be an Israeli since October 7th, is one intensity after another intensity, after another intensity, after another intensity. Miluim after Miluim after Miluim after Miluim after Miluim. They never press pause, and we can press pause. So, it's all because of Goral, the happenstance. Where their ancestors moved, where our ancestors move. What flows from that? So I want to offer to you this morning that what flows from that is 5 duties. 5 duties. Duties that we offer and that we owe Israel and Israelis. The first is the duty to acknowledge the difference, that they are living this war and we are reading about this war. And when we acknowledge that, to really own that this is our common story, it's the Jewish people's common story, it's a post-Hitler common story of the Jewish people. How do we survive the abyss and thrive? And because of happenstance, one is fighting the war, one is watching about the war on our screens, and only once we acknowledge and internalize and own very deeply that reality, then we're ready to proceed. The next is the duty to care. The duty to care. This is not their story. This is our story. And then the next, the duty to love. Love Israel and love Israelis. And we don't love Israel and love Israelis because they're all perfect any more than we love our parents or children or siblings because they're perfect. We don't love them because they're perfect. Who's perfect? We love them because they are ours. Israel is ours. We have a duty to love Israel and a duty to love Israelis. And we have a duty to give. We have a duty to make it better. Pick some vision of Israel that you believe in, and then give energy and give time and give resources and give kishka to make it happen. For me, my vision of Israel that I believe in is that it is a Jewish and democratic state. And that's not easy and that's not automatic. And my homework is to do the work that makes that aspiration, Jewish and democratic, closer to reality. And our last duty, all of us, you have, I have, we have, a duty to show up for Israel, show up in Israel, and let Israel and let Israelis know that while they are fighting this war, we are with them. They're not alone. A duty to acknowledge, to care, to love, to give, to make better, and to show up. You know that in great dramas, there is the best actor and the best supporting actor. In the ongoing drama of the Jewish people's story in the 20th and 21st century, there can be no doubt that Israel is the main actor. What happened on June 13th was like a James Bond film, but it was real and true. They're the main actor, but we are supporting actors. And that is a crucial role. And here's what it means. I want to leave you with one word. One word. And it's the most important word. It's the most important word. It's a preposition. The one word is with. W-I-T-H, with. Our job is to be with Israel. Our job is to be with Israelis now, always, and forever. Shabbat Shalom.